It is virtually certain that it will replace a lot of people. There's going to be great disruption. And then the question for all of these things is, how are we going to deal with each other? The number one question is, how do you and I and we deal with each other so that we're not just dealing with in a greedy way of our own self, because you can have a great civil war or conflict due to not managing such social issues. And those social issues are difficult to manage because everybody has a polarity regarding those social issues.
The AI will teach you, and you will work with the AI in a back and forth way to become much more automated, much more effective. And in the investment, it's key. It's going to be key to the future, and it's going to be key that way in so many different areas. In healthcare, I spend a lot of time probably looking at healthcare, but there are many, many areas. So that kind of disruption is where the power is, more important even than where the chips are and who's producing it. AI is a tremendously powerful two-edged sword, right? AI is going to be a fantastic weapon, right? The winner of the AI race is going to be not only an economic winner, it's going to be the geopolitical winner. They'll win the wars. So yes, it's both.
What happens with AI is, for the most part, is it takes a lot of data and it, with a high enough sample size, and then it puts together its own algorithms. Okay, there are two ways you can come up with algorithms. You can either take your thinking and express them in algorithms, or you can say, put the data in and say, what is the algorithm? That's machine learning. And when you have machine learning, it'll give you equations which quite often are not understandable. If you would try to say, okay, now describe what it's telling you, it's very difficult to describe, and so they can escape understanding. But if the future is different from the past, and you don't have deep understanding, you're going to get in trouble.
The technology advances are a two-edged sword. The way I think it is, it's going to raise productivity. It's going to raise output per man hour. And that's a good thing. And that power of that good thing, means you don't have to work as much, or you get more out of that result. And then it becomes, what do you do with the distribution of that, right?
Yeah.
So it becomes how are you like with each other to deal with these incredible disruption effects? There's a combination of a question. It's not just Doge. It's a matter of less regulation, productivity changes that might come from AI, which then translate to profits. That might be capital gains profits. They might be profits and all of that. And so, but it really, when I look at it, it looks very tough. But there's also, tariffs produce revenue. So, yeah. People think on the tariffs, people don't think of taxes as inflation, but taxes are inflation.
Right.
Because it costs you more. So the real question, as you play with the numbers, is it's very, very difficult to know and be precise about how much is going to come from productivity and profit increases from the efficiencies gained by AI and new technologies. How much do it come from this and that? We don't honestly know. But the important thing is we're at the edge, and not to make it a crapshoot. So, right. and to get the number must be 3%. And so you should have a clear passage to that 3% number. So number one is, I call it my 3% solution. The solution is you must cut the deficit, which is the equivalent of bonds selling, down to 3% of GDP. And it's 7.5% expected.
That's about $900 billion a year.
Yeah.
Roughly. And that means cutting it, as you point out, by cutting the deficit by more than half from where it sits.
Yeah, well, it's, yes, because with the continuing the tax cuts, Trump tax cuts, that'll be 7.5%, and you want to get it down to 3%. It sounds draconian, but we did that kind of change from 1990 till 1997, and there are 3 keys to this. Do it soon, fast, when the time is good, when the economy's good. In other words, do it now.
Now.
The temptation is going to say, well, we're going to ease into this and we're going to be there and we're going to do it in 3 years from now. But if you have a bad economy, you cannot do it. Okay. And that's the worst. So we have the best economy, and the sooner you do it, the more you're going to do it. So 3% solution, do it now, and recognize that you have to deliver it. So if you're having, let's say, cost cuts in government, you have to own the number. So everybody's got to pledge 3%. Now, the arguments as to how to get there, but you have to own the number, so much so that you'd say, if it's not 3%, throw me out of office. And you can't make it any one thing.
Right.
But you also have to realize, like, if you did it spread out, nothing's going to be insurmountable. But the main thing is, you take the things you can cut from or build from. So what can you cut from? And you look at government expenditures. Roughly 70% of government expenditures you can't cut. So so it comes down to a small percentage that you can cut, but you find out how much can you cut. So the important thing is 3%. The other thing about it is to realize that if you make those moves, the bond market will benefit. You see this, and so interest
rates will go down.
Right, and interest rates going down, interest rate expense is most important. If you look at my calculations, if you get 100 basis points cut in rates, that's equivalent to significant cutting in spending. So he's right, but if you do that without the other parts, you're going to make it less desirable to own these things, these bonds. Right. Because that's going to be a problem. Where if you do these things together, they can support each other. I think that we all think we're optimized for the things that those technologies get us. In other words, it'll be wonderful. Our life expectancy rises, we become smarter, all of these wonderful things. Who could argue about their life expectancy rising and so on? And sometimes we lose sight that may not even be the most important things in a world that's in conflict and so on. So if you look, I did a study of the well-being of 24 top countries using a lot of statistics. And by the way, it's online. Anybody can see it. It's the Great Powers measures. And it's very interesting that I measure different measures of power, income, military power, education power, different types of power. And then I measure happiness, and I measure health. And past a certain basic level, there is no correlation per income and happiness and health.
As I think you know, for the last 25 years, we have taken our thinking and put them in algorithms, and so we make decisions. The computer takes those criteria, algorithms, and they put them, and they're in there, and it takes data, and they operate as an independent decision maker in parallel with our decision making. So for me, it's like there's a chess game playing, and I'm a person with my chess game, and I'm saying it made that move, and I'm making the move, and how do I compare those two moves? So we've done a lot, but let me give you a rule. If the future can be different from the past, and you don't have deep understanding, you should not rely on AI. Okay? Those two things.
Deep understanding of
the cause-effect relationships that are leading you to place that bet in anything, okay? If anything important. Let's say if it was do surgeries, and you would say, how do I do surgeries? I think it's totally fine to watch all the doctors do the surgeries. You can put it on take a digital camera and do that, convert that into AI algorithms that go to robots and have them do surgeries, and I'd be comfortable with that. Because if it keeps doing the same thing over and over again and you have enough of that, that would be fine, even though you may not understand the algorithms, because if the thing's happening over and over again and you're not asking, the future would be the same.
Yes.
That appendicitis or whatever it is will be handled the same way the surgery, that's fine. However, what happens with AI is, for the most part, is it takes a lot of data and it, with a high enough sample size, and then it puts together its own algorithms. Okay, there are two ways you can come up with algorithms. You can either take your thinking and express them in algorithms, or you can say, put the data in and say, what is the algorithm? That's machine learning.
Yeah.
And when you have machine learning, it'll give you equations which quite often are not understandable. If you would try to say, okay, now describe what it's telling you, it's very difficult to describe, and so they can escape understanding. And so it's very good for doing those things that could be done over and over again if you're watching and you're not taking that. But if the future is different from the past, and you have that, then your future is different from the past, and you don't have deep understanding, you're going to get in trouble. And so that's the main thing. As far as AI is concerned, AI and let's say computer replications of thinking in various ways, I think it's particularly good for processing. But the notion of what you want to do is better most of the time determined by the human mind. What are the principles? Like, okay, how should I raise my children? It's going to be a long time before AI, you're going to say it has a good enough judgment to do that. Who should I marry? All of those things. Maybe you can get the computer to help you, but if you just took data and do machine learning, it's not going to find it. If you were to then take what are my criteria for any of those questions, and then say put them into an algorithm, you'd be a lot better off than if you took AI to do it. But by and large, the mind should be used for inventing and those creative things, and then the computer should be used for processing, because it could process a lot more information, a lot faster, a lot more accurately, and a lot less emotionally. So any notion of thinking in the form of processing type thinking should be done by a computer, and anything that is in the notion of doing that other type of thinking should be operating with the brain, operating in a way where you can say, that makes sense. My experience has been that almost all things, including those things that I thought were pretty much impossible to express, I've been able to express in algorithms, but that doesn't constitute all things. So you can express far more than you can imagine you'll be able to express, because this is very powerful. That originality will not come from machine learning.
If the future is different than the past and you don't have understanding, AI is dangerous. We are making revolutionary changes in the way that we're going to do things that man has not seen before. I and Bridgewater created like computer chess. Think about a computer chess game, computer decision making that reflects our thinking and our criteria, and it operates in parallel, like playing chess with a computer chess game next to you, AI in its various forms, and so it evolved. There is AI is also acquainted with machine learning. Okay, so now it's important to distinguish two things. A machine following patterns and following whether those patterns will persist in the future. I think that I want to distinguish between what I'll call an expert system, what is called an expert system, taking your criteria and putting it in, and also AI, which produces a lot of data and produces then the output of what you should do. The gap between those two things is understanding. So if, and I'll just to hit the highlight quick, if the future is different than the past and you don't have understanding, AI is dangerous. If the future is similar to the past, so you can look at things. If you're doing a surgery, you can have robots do a surgery because that same cutting, that same action is going to happen the same way. You don't have any problems. That's going to be great. So the power of machine learning to make AI is great, okay? But when you give up the understanding and the future is different from the past, it's a different story. Markets are difficult that way because if something is learned, it's not valuable because everybody does it, so it gets into the price. So it's important to understand the distinction. Yes, I follow actively what's going on in all computers, and I think that it's the greatest force because what's happened in both of those ways, machine learning and also expert system, is that we have the computer to give us the capacity to learn and transact and operate in a much better way. So when you can learn at an accelerated way, because that's what progress is about. Productivity comes about by the fastest amount of progress because you know how to do things better. And so the capacity with computer-aided decision making, so I'll throw both of those in the category of computer-aided decision making. We are making revolutionary changes in the way that we're going to do things that are that man has not seen before. And so it's very, very exciting.
Lots of jobs are going to be lost. Lots of change is going to happen in terms of turbulence. And how do we have a plan? How can we even agree on a plan of how to deal with that? I don't think we're in a time, maybe in the rest of our lifetimes, that agreement is going to be easy. I think we're going to see fragmentation of states from the central government. I think you're going to see big fragmentation in the world, not just in the United States, on the failure to agree on most things. And so I'm worried about the timeline.
If AI is successful and moves quickly, there will be significant job loss. If there is significant job loss, does that not fuel the rise of socialism in the United States?
I think that we can do it. When I talk about the 3% solution, I think that we can cut and make the adjustments in a few percentages to be able to do this without great trauma. So we can get to having that limitation done without great trauma, and it will be supported by interest rate moves. So that's first. We can get this thing done. We must get that thing done. And if we don't, then of course, I think we are in an era that, of course, we're going to have great conflict in the United States. This is not a run to nirvana. This is, the moment. You're going to have legal challenges. One state, the Democrats, the blue states, the red states, and within the states, you're going to have a lot of disruption and you're going to have a lot of dissatisfaction, and it's going to be about money and power. And so that's ahead. And so, like you say, there's the socialists, the left, the right, and that's why you're going to this type of civil war or internal conflict is going to be with us. This is not a straight race to nirvana and prosperity. And you have that at the same time as you have the other elements. They're the five big forces. So what I'm calling, so you have the debt money we talked about. There's the internal conflict. That is, we're going to test the legal system, and we're in an environment now that might is right. Internationally, you are going to have the same kind of conflict. We touched on China. We're going to have conflict. You no longer have a cooperative, even an attempt at a cooperative world order. Things like the World Health Organization, the World Trade Organization, all of those are obsolete. And so we're going to have again, might is right, and so it's going to be a period of greater conflict. You're going to have a technology war. You can have an increased military spending in this kind of environment. That creates a budget issue. And climate will have, it will be an economic issue as well as a environmental issue. So these things, these expenses are going to go up. So all of those coming together. So yes, left, right, and conflict will be ahead of us.